I have some updates on the possible return of the Seattle Supersonics. What was said in the video? You will find out after a word from our sponsor, SeatGeek. SeatGeek is a mobile ticketing app for sporting events, concerts, and other events. They make the buying experience easier by the app ranking each ticket from 0 to 10 to see if you are getting a good deal, and you can see exactly where you are sitting. I regularly use that app, and I have had nothing but a fantastic experience with SeatGeek. Use my promo code ROOFTOPSPORTS to get $20 off of your first purchase. Link to the code, app, and website will be in the description, so take advantage, and thank you. We've got some recent updates on the possible return of the Seattle Supersonics, and I am joined by our friend Brian Robinson, the executive producer of Iconic Sonics, who works with Gary Payton, the glove, and George Karl, the longtime coach of the Seattle Supersonics from 1992 to 1998. And also joined, I've got Jeff Brown of the Bring Back Our Sonics social media page, and Storm Chasers, who he creates content and does regular reporting for the Seattle Storm. How are you gentlemen all doing today? It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's great to see you, Joe.
Great to see you, man. I'm fantastic. That intro was just great. You know, it sometimes it feels like we're so far removed from why we all care about this so much, you know, and then you watch that intro with your friends and it brings it all back. So I'm fantastic. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I was going through that video, I remember seeing there was that Jerome James, who was actually my favorite player throughout that time. And thanks to the Sonics, he's the reason why he is very much set for life.
One thing that's just amazing is how little HD video there is of the Sonics. When you go back and look, you find all that stuff. All of it existed before HD. And you look at that 2005 video, and you can't believe that there isn't even a single clear image of our guys, of Ray Allen. It's disappointing. If it had been a few years later, we would have more of that stuff recorded on the internet and in HD. But it's hard to even find it. So good for you tracking that down.
I know. And I found that clip through the Lakers versus Sonics, and that was Gary Payton's return when he was with the Lakers along with Kobe and Shaq and Karl Malone. And that was also the time when he didn't even want to make eye contact with our good old friend Howard Schultz, who was the former owner of the Sonics. So reason why we're doing this show, we've had some updates on possible expansion, which was brought up by Adam Silver and also our mayor, Bruce Harrell, in case you haven't seen those clips where last week Bruce Harrell was talking about a possible return of the Sonics.
I'm ready to add another point to our 46 points of our downtown activation plan, bringing the Sonics back.
He didn't say much, but Brian's got some information for us. And the first question I got for you, Brian, is what were your thoughts on Bruce Harrell's recent statements, especially after Adam Silver has been talking about possible expansion?
Well, you've seen a steady escalation and a steady evolution of the discussion and rhetoric around expansion. They went from the league is not talking about expansion and is not considering expansion at this time and has no plans to talk about or consider expansion, to saying we're not talking about it at this time, but maybe we will someday. And it's evolved all the way to the point now where they're very, very clear. They've announced a timetable that the league is going to pursue expansion upon completion of the media rights deal, which is anticipated to be done sometime between June and November of this year. And so there is an expectation that the league is going to expand. And the expectation is based on Commissioner Silver's comments. I'm not surprised to see Mayor Harrell jumping into it. Bruce is a huge sports fan, and he's really excited to bring the Sonics back. It was great to hear him talk about it. I think I think this is going to continue and escalate, and it's been announced at this point.
Which leads me to the second question. Do you expect an announcement of the expansion after the new media rights deal is finalized?
Yes, I do. It's been very clearly telegraphed and very clearly stated by the commissioner that he intends to pursue expansion after the media rights deals are done. And I've been, hearing that it's going to be immediately after, that there's not going to be any pause, that it's going to be very quickly. So the questions that kind of come up are, if they're going to announce an expansion process immediately after the media rights deal is done, well, what does immediately mean? Does immediately mean 6 weeks or 2 weeks or 6 months? And we don't really know. And also, what do they mean by done with the media rights deal? The traditional media rights deal is, with 3 primary television broadcasts. The new media rights deal, everybody knows, is going to be much, much more complex. They're going to have multiple television bidders. They're going to have local and international. They're going to have multiple streaming deals. So when is it going to be done? I don't know that it's ever going to be done. And so the question is just kind of, when is it going to be done enough that they can move on to expansion, and what's the appropriate delay? And I think, sometime between the end of April and the end of September, they're probably going to be, quote, done with the media rights deal. And then sometime 1 to 6 months after that, they're going to announce expansion. So we have a pretty clear window. It's going to be somewhere, between August and February. I think most people consider the All-Star game in 2025 as kind of the last possible time that they'll be making that announcement. And the time they make the announcement doesn't necessarily impact when teams might arrive. So if they announce in October or they announce in February, we still likely are looking at a team arrival, most likely in 2026, possibly in 2025, possibly in 2027, but 2026 seems to be the date most people are kind of banking on.
Yeah, and then Brian, if I can jump in, you were just talking about the kind of timetable and stuff, and obviously when the NHL made their announcement that we were officially getting expansion, from that time to when they were actually on the ice playing, it was about 3 years. What kind of is the realistic expectation from what if the announcement's this year? Do you think 2 years, 3 years? How soon could it be?
What I have heard is that because the building is effectively built, that it could be very quickly. That they could literally turn a team around. They could announce a team in February and have it start playing in October. But we know that they're likely to expand to 2 cities. The reports have been that Las Vegas is the second. There is an existing arena in Las Vegas, and the owners of the Las Vegas Golden Knights may make a bid for expansion. We also know that Tim Lewicki and the Oakview Group are in the process of building a new arena casino resort in Las Vegas that many people assume would be the home of the NBA there, in a building financed by Fenway Sports Group, which owns the Boston Red Sox and would involve LeBron James. So I think that the consensus seems to be that Las Vegas building will be completed in time for the October 2026 start of the 2026-2027 season. And the consensus seems to be that they would launch both teams the same year. I think that there is a chance that they decide to have Seattle come first and do them in separate years. But I don't know that anyone feels a huge urgency. Once they announce expansion, 2 years goes by awfully quickly, and we're going to have a lot of fun in the middle. And we have the Kraken, and so I'm not sure there's a huge urgency to move faster than that, but they could.
Yeah, I think you kind of asked the question I was about to ask, but obviously what we saw with the NHL was the Golden Knights came and then Seattle came later, so it wasn't at the same time. So do you think how important would that be if they really wanted to get Seattle and Vegas the exact same year, or if they could do one faster than the other?
There seems to be an assumption that they're going to do 2 in 1 year, and that they're going to come in as a tandem that sets the playoffs and the seedings and everything. It's an even number that's works well. But I thought the way they did it with Vegas and Seattle even though it wasn't really intentional and was really more a result of Seattle just not having its arena deal figured out, I thought it was great giving each team their own year. And so I don't know how they're going to go. I don't have any insight in that. But if someone were to ask me, should they consider doing the two teams in separate years? I think they should, because it really lets you showcase. You know, I felt that the first year was just all about the Kraken, that the whole NHL came out and showcased. And I'd love to see them do that again in the NBA. But the reports are that they're looking at two teams launching at the same time.
And when we're looking at expansion to Seattle, I know there's been talks of the Kraken owners also being the owners of a potential Sonics team. Is that what you expect, or do you see any other potential ownership groups coming in?
I think that there might be multiple bidders, and we don't know, and we'll see when they come out. We could see our friends in Soto reemerge. There haven't really been any rumblings of that recently, but the logical thing is that Climate Pledge Arena would host in a building that's built that seems to be perfect. Samantha Holloway, who's the majority owner of the Kraken, is a basketball person. She's excited about this. She's appeared on our Iconic Sonics podcast and stated her intentions. And I know that group will make an offer, is committed to bringing the Sonics home. And I think it's logical to view them as the favorites.
And I know, obviously, as Sonics fans, we've gone through like a lot of heartbreak and disappointment over the years. Is there any realistic scenario you could envision where the NBA does announce expansion, but it ends up being like Vegas and Louisville, or Vegas and Vancouver, or Mexico City, or something like that?
Commissioner Silva recently kind of took Mexico City off the table for this round, and I was glad to hear that he did, because there have been some rumblings that Las Vegas and Mexico City were gaining momentum. I think we have had our heart burned enough that nobody is going to take this for granted, and we all know that there's a risk in these big billion-dollar deals that somehow they go awry at the last minute. I don't think that Louisville or Kansas City or any of those other places are really threats as other alternatives. But I do think that the big risk here is the price, and just that it's going to be so monumentally expensive that it really has to be successful. And so, the things we can do right now to make sure that to give us our best chance for hoops is really to make sure that hockey is successful. And to make sure that, if we kind of think this through and how it's going to go, there is going to be a point in the next 6 months where that Kraken ownership group or any other bidder is going to be asked, will you write a $75 million check as a down payment on your $4.5 billion franchise purchase? And we have to make sure that everybody wants to do it at that moment. Because when people ask me what the price is, the price is going to be $1 less than no. That's what the NBA is going to do. It's going to be, okay, $5 billion, I'll say yes. $5 billion and one, and the answer is no, or 4, or whatever the number is. So I think that our bigger risk is, global recession and war and interest rates and things that could make this less attractive to the people who have to do it right at the moment they have to write the check, and right at the moment they have to make this big life-altering decision to make this investment and jump off this cliff, because it's a big deal. No matter how much money you have, it is a big deal to commit to this.
Definitely. I think last one for me. If for some reason NBA ends up not expanding, they decide, we've decided against expansion. Would you foresee any team currently there that could relocate to Seattle, or do you think it's either going to be expansion or nothing?
I believe that we will get a team. I believe that there were opportunities and concepts about relocation prior to the pandemic, when expansion really became the option number one. And my guess is they would fall back to those options. I think that the price points we're talking about, someone's probably going to bite at that. So I think in the event that the NBA decided not to expand, my guess is that we would pursue relocation, and that a team would be available. And I think the candidates for those are pretty widely reported.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks for all those insights, and hopefully we won't have to run through that where they say, "Oh, no expansion for Seattle," because that's like the last thing we need to hear, because we've already been through it. We went through relocation, we went through arena rejections, we went through the whole Sacramento thing. So hopefully everything will be on the right track, and especially from what you told me, with the right people that we do have, especially with the ownership of the Kraken, I would definitely have confidence going into this whole thing, and hopefully everything will be a smooth process. And I guess the question on this one's kind of moot at this point, but LeBron James, one of the superstars of the league, he says that he would love to own an NBA team someday, specifically Vegas. Now, do you think the NBA would delay anything of expansion until he retires?
No, I don't. I mean, look, the expansion is going to be, if they expand the two markets at $4 billion each ish. So you're talking about an $8 to $9 billion combined transaction, plus two arenas that are $1 billion each. That is a large investment that you don't dilly-dally around or adjust or modify or trim around the edges for one person. And they can rewrite the rules for LeBron if they want LeBron. They are not going to divert the transaction for him. I could see scenarios where LeBron has shares set aside that he assumes or purchases after retirement, and he's not a day one owner but a year three owner. But I don't think this all seems very well thought out, and everybody seems to. It's just different than the last time. They're all saying the same thing, and if you listen, it's very consistent. So I think that Fenway Sports Group is pursuing a team in Las Vegas in Tim Lewicki's new arena, and the LeBron James is a member of that ownership group. I think they're looking at Seattle, and Seattle. The two cities are really different. So Las Vegas brings this kind of entertainment hub, and they're going to make NBA Disneyland at this new resort where they're going to host the summer league, and they're going to have just if you're an NBA fan, that's where you're going to stay in Las Vegas. This new, I think it's 45 acres or something. They have this incredible place they're going to build. And then, but Seattle offers tech and streaming and access to all this talent and wealth from the industry. So I just don't see anything they're doing as being something they would be willing to divert just for one guy. They'll just work around it and make it work by modifying his terms or the system or something.
Yeah, something. I mean, I would have been shocked if the NBA did something like that, where they're like, "Oh no, we got to wait till LeBron retires," and who knows when he's going to retire? Because the last thing we've all heard is he's still waiting on his son Bronny James to be drafted so he can play with him. And as long as his body holds up, I mean, I can still see the guy still playing at least another like 5 years at the most. Who knows?
I think he's got a plan. I mean, his son's going to be drafted in 25, and the arena is going to be ready in 26. Kevin Durant's talking about Seattle. I mean, LeBron gets it. He knows these storybook endings, and so maybe he plays for a year in Vegas or before he owns the team. But I think those reports about Fenway and about him are accurate. And I think he'll transition to ownership. And just imagine for a moment if those two teams enter and LeBron owns a share of Las Vegas and Kevin Durant owns a share of Seattle. Just imagine that story, and all of us, behind Kevin Durant, and he's out in front talking about how much he's missed it here. It's that's a good story. And I think those guys are going to want to be part of that.
Makes me feel old too, personally, that the last time the Sonics, that last time we even had the Sonics, Kevin Durant was in his rookie year, and LeBron James wasn't even in his prime and never even got an MVP award. I mean, that's how long it's been, and hopefully by the time the Sonics are back, hopefully we can see at least a minute of of game time out of them before they retire, because it's already been difficult that we had to say goodbye to Kobe twice, unfortunately, before the Sonics even had an opportunity to come back, even before of any kind of announcement. Hopefully, we'll see a team back so we can watch LeBron and Kevin Durant for one last time. And then next question I've got is, what are your overall thoughts on Climate Pledge Arena? Knowing that it has been very successful for hockey and the WNBA, like, what are your overall thoughts on the stadium, and how effective would it be as a stadium for the NBA?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, I think for me, it's well, one, I know that they do have like NBA locker room areas ready back, like in the back areas. It's no, it's a beautiful arena. I covered the Storm there. It's super high quality. They've done a lot of great things with the arena itself. I know for me, one of my favorite things is the living wall. That's a popular spot for Kraken fans too. Which is all the plants and the not trees, but plants and floral stuff growing on the wall is pretty awesome. So, yeah, no, it's, I think for the most part, it's pretty much everything that we could have hoped for. And, I mean, yeah, it works great for the Storm. So I imagine it would be great for the NBA as well.
I'm going to just take a moment to just call this out. I love going to Seattle Center for events. It's so cool. And one of the things that I never would have thought when we were having all of our arguments about traffic, most of the time I have to drive down there just because of time constraints. But when I take the train and I get off the train at Westlake Station and I get on that monorail, the monorail's all wobbly with its lights. We're going through the Seattle rooftops, and it's just so cool. Then you come out in the Armory and you're at this beautiful Seattle Center. So I've been just really, really happy with the location, and they fill it just consistently. It's crazy how many nights they have a full house there for concerts and the Kraken. So it's been really fun watching that, and the stories of construction of you talked, Joe, about how we went and looked at the Climate Pledge right before it opened in the middle of the pandemic. They opened that and it only had 20% of its lights and cameras installed. They ran it the first night off a laptop because the computer hadn't arrived. And we've had a lot of fun in that building already. Pearl Jam this spring. I'm pretty excited.
I mean, so much excitement in that stadium. And I'll even admit that I've had my share of experiences going to a couple Storm basketball games, including Sue Bird's final game. And when I went there for the first time, I was absolutely shocked on how the experience was like. I mean, I'll admit it. I had my doubts on the stadium just because of like how the roof was going to be taken care of. Like, how are they going to deal with that since it's a historical landmark? Like, how are they going to deal with that traffic like we talked about? But put that all aside, when I went there, the presentation was absolutely amazing. Like, I felt like it was more of like a thrilling show to watch than an actual game.
It's all brand new. It's all state of the art. And yet somehow it really has the soul of the old building. Like, you really feel it when you see some of the architecture and the beams and the roof line. Like, it, in our city, we've seen so much change. We've seen so many of our old favorite places torn down and new stuff built. I'm just glad they captured the soul of it, and it feels like our building still. So I'm very happy with the outcome of Climate Pledge Arena.
The other thing I'm definitely looking forward to is, a lot of people say a lot of things like there were baseball players back then that used to be intimidated by the Kingdom when the Mariners were hot back then, or even Safeco Field. That was known to be an electric stadium when the Mariners are actually good. And then the Seahawks, we got Lumen Field, one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL. Now it's like neck and neck with like Arrowhead. And I remember where there were basketball players that also expressed that they were actually intimidated playing in Seattle. And I can't wait to hear the comments from NBA players of the future saying how intimidating Climate Pledge Arena is. Because when I went there, I actually had a feel of intimidation, of being intimidated, just because the sound was really great. The crowd was just really loud, and I felt like the sound was multiplying. So with Climate Pledge, I definitely look forward to that. And hopefully, once again, we'll get to see Sonics basketball there.
Just gonna say, because you're just talking about it. I mean, so I just interviewed the new Storm players that have been signed, Neka Gumike and Skylar Diggins Smith, two All Stars that they added to the team. Skylar, she specifically talked about that as far as hated playing in Seattle as an opposing team because of how fierce and tough the fans can be. They're right on top of you there. And she just talked about how it was like, it's like you said, intimidating. It's a legit home court advantage, and that she was really looking forward to now playing on the Storm this upcoming season. And so, like you said, I think once we get a basketball team, they'll also have a fantastic home court.
Which makes me feel really good about having the NBA team there, because last time I went to a game, an NBA game, it was in Portland. Like, I'll be honest, like, I don't really enjoy the NBA game as much as I used to because it's mostly 3-point shooting and defense. But luckily with us Seattle fans, I don't think we'll care about that too much because we care more about our team winning than how the game is played. So, but anyways, but the next question I wanted to go over, and this is something that I have thought about for like ever since the Sonics left. Like, we see it in social media sometimes where, or maybe in the public, or maybe on YouTube, where fans always express that anger they have towards Oklahoma, towards Starbucks. And I remember, Brian, that you talked about this before several times about trying not to express so much about the past, but sometimes we see it once in a while. Like, for example, someone will crack a Starbucks joke, or someone will say something about Oklahoma, or the whole "we were robbed." And sometimes with stuff with NBA 2K, where they put Sean Kemp and like Kevin Durant all together because they had this all ultimate team of each team in history. What would you say to those fans, Brian, that for those that are still expressing some kind of eerie from 2008, like what would you say to them today? Because I will say it, I'm honestly like moved on from 2008. So what would you say to the fans that are still expressing that?
I would tell them if Joe could move on, anyone can move on, man, because you were the saltiest guy in the whole game. Look, I think you get to define your own journey, and it ain't over till it's over, and you get to pick the end. And so we're going to look back at this, and we're either going to be able to say, I got screwed in 2008, boo-hoo, boo-hoo, or we're going to say, man, 20 years of friendship and 20 years of this improbable holding on, and now we're at the reward. And so I think that this is the moment to just enjoy it. And people can do whatever they want, but I would tell them you're really missing out, because long ago we started having fun again. When we do these events, we had Nate McMillan in town at the Moss Bay Beer Hall 10 days ago. He had a great time. We've had people out to see Coach Carl and Gary, and now we're in this new phase where it's just going to be really, really fun. And so I feel kind of bad for folks who can't enjoy it. Let it go. Life's too short. If Joe can do it, anybody can do it. Those are my messages.
I'll certainly have a little bit more explanation about that, probably in another video. But yeah, you pretty much said out what I was about to say was, ironically, had the Sonics not left Seattle, this video wouldn't even exist. I wouldn't have met you, Brian. I wouldn't have met you, Jeff. I would have met anyone. And most importantly, like, I wouldn't have known, like, or had the urge to learn about the behind the scenes of the business of sports. And as painful as 2008 was, I still learned a lot of valuable lessons and learned a lot of valuable information of how sports work, that we all should get understanding that in pro sports, it's more than just a sport. It's a business. And I do think it is important that all fans, if not most fans, should at least get to know like the the ins and outs of it, so we could at least all understand what in the world is going on when these teams make these kind of moves. But yeah, like I said, as crushing as it was, I'm still thankful that I still got the opportunity to basically meet anyone possible. And also, I also want to reserve this comment. I also want to express my gratitude that we all got to meet Sonic's guy, and I do wish that he was still around because he would be proud of all of us that we're still hanging there. And I mean, it is unfortunate that he's still not going to be able to see the return of the Sonics, but at least from up there, he'll be able to see it from there at least.
We've lost a lot of people along the way. It's been a long time, and Chris was just a shining example of just staying positive, and the way he communicated with people was fantastic. I'm proud of you, Joe, and I'm really happy that we're all friends. And like, I wouldn't trade the friendships for anything. So I guess I wouldn't take the team back, you know.
Because wouldn't trade friendships for a basketball team. I couldn't do that either. What is your most favorite moment in Sonic's history? And I'll go Brian and Jeff. Brian, you go first.
My favorite moment in team history was Game 7 of the '96 playoff against the Jazz. I had season tickets that year, and I was 22, and my 12-year-old brother-in-law was living with us. We were raising the 12-year-old. Every game, I had promised him I would take him, and every game I wound up taking someone else. And finally, at Game 7, he just insisted, and so I took this little kid to a game, and I remember waiting to get in. Someone offered us $100 each for our tickets, which was a lot of money at the time. I was poor and in college, and I turned to my little brother and I said, "Do you want to take the money?" And he turned and he said, "Are you a Jazz fan or a Sonics fan?" I said, "I'm a Jazz fan." And he said, "No." And then we went to that game and we just screamed and we counted down all of Karl Malone's free throws, and we hugged strangers. And that game was the highlight for me. I've got other stories, but that's the one with that kid.
I think for me, also the '96 finals, but I guess in general, probably just all throughout the years going to games with my dad. So from the time I was a little kid until they left, we went to basically like half season every single year, and just all those memories of growing up watching the team, from like Xavier McDaniel and Dale Ellis and stuff to Gary and Sean and stuff, and then Ray Allen and Rashard Lewis just throughout the years. All those moments, getting to enjoy the love of basketball together.
Fantastic moments from the both of you, and now my favorite moment. It was the 2004-2005 season when the Seattle Supersonics with Ray Allen, Rashard Lewis, Luke Ridnour, coached by Nate McMillan.
Jerome
James. He's my most favorite out of all of them. But they had that playoff run, which basically seemed out of nowhere because the last couple seasons they were struggling, didn't make the playoffs. A lot of criticisms on the management, especially got to the point where we had, someone said by Sherman Alexie, 21 feet of useless centers of Calvin Booth, Vitaly Potapenko, and Jerome James. But yeah, they had that run to the playoffs against the Sacramento Kings, and I happened to be at Game 5, the clincher, where that game was just back and forth, and the atmosphere was just unmatched. Like, it was actually getting hostile to the point because us Sonics fans were frustrated at the refs. They were actually screaming BS like over and over again. Like, I was actually terrified because I was just this 13-year-old teenager and like, wait, everyone's screaming BS. I mean, it was just a memory that I'll never forget. And scaringly, it was the final Sonics victory, a playoff series victory that I ever witnessed. So I definitely have that in my name. And I know we said the whole Jerome James a lot. Now to think of it, I always kept saying Ray Allen was my favorite, or Rashard Lewis, or Antonio Daniels. But Jerome James was my favorite because throughout that season, he was like maybe a solid center. And then he just exploded for 20 points against Sacramento. So that one is definitely at my tops. Do you still follow the NBA, both of you? And do you guys have a favorite team that you're watching? I'll make it quick. The only thing I follow about NBA is fantasy basketball. I have a fantasy basketball league, and I like the Cleveland Cavaliers, even without LeBron James.
I know for me, I could never really fully take on a new team because I felt like if I did that, it would be like accepting that the Sonics were just gone forever and they would never come back. So I definitely didn't start rooting for the Blazers, even, as fun as Damian Lillard was over the years. Probably the closest thing was the Warriors, especially once Durant left Oklahoma City and then joined them, because then it was kind of like a shot against OKC. And I don't really recall having a big rivalry with Golden State, during the 90s and stuff as much. A little bit of the run TMC, but nothing where they were like a hated rival like the Jazz or the Blazers. And so, yeah, kind of Golden State a little bit, but I've never fully adapted a new team.
I try every single year. You guys might know, like, I try and say this is going to be my team this year. It used to be whatever team Jamal Crawford was playing for, Steve Ballmer's Clippers, or a team I like to try to root for. This year, my team is the Bucks. We spent some time preseason with Vin Baker, who coaches Giannis, and the Bucks were kind enough to host us for a weekend. Marjan Beauchamp is a Seattle player who's one of 5 Native American players in NBA history, and a nonprofit I work with, Rise Above Native Youth. We work to use basketball to inspire Native young people to achieve success, and Marjan's been a big part of that. So this connection we've had with Vin and Marjan, and then Dame getting traded there, I thought for sure this was the year that I was really going to get into the Bucks. But it's just hard, We spend so much energy wanting the Sonics back that it just feels like there's not enough time left in the day to adopt a new team. So every year I pick one. Every year it doesn't really stick. This year it was the Bucks.
And thank you for watching this video. Hopefully that gave you some kind of optimism for the Sonics to come back to Seattle. And I will keep you updated for more Sonics updates. And also be sure to check out Brian Robinson's Iconic Sonics website and Jeff Brown's Storm Chasers podcast. Links will be provided in the description.